community on the devastating murders down in Monterey Park for the folks that were celebrating the Lunar New Year in a dance club down there. It was a very tragic, tragic event. There were 11 victims. Initially, there were 10 and another one passed away today. There are 9 that were injured. The shooter, of course, is no longer with us. He actually shot himself. And so we don't know what the motive is at this time, but definitely our hearts and prayers are with the victims and their families of that terrible event. The flag, you might notice, is at half mast here at City Hall to mourn those victims. Also wanted to take this opportunity to adjourn tonight's meeting in the memories of a couple of very important men to the city of Auburn. First of all, Jeff Hamilton. Jeff was born and raised here in Auburn. I actually went to school with Jeff. He was a year ahead of me. And he was the 1992 bronze medal speed skater award winner. So fantastic speed skater. And he just passed away. I believe it was on January 10th after a long battle with cancer. He leaves his wife and 2 daughters and a huge legacy to the ski community here in Auburn and around the world. Auburn definitely lost another one of its sons with his passing. So I'd like to adjourn the meeting in his memory today. And I'd also like to adjourn our meeting in the memory of Ken Anderson. Ken was on contract with the city of Auburn for almost 2 decades as our city traffic engineer. And Ken was tragically killed on January 20th. He was walking in just a crosswalk with his daughter, and a speeder came in and hit him and his daughter. His daughter was injured, but he did not survive. Very, very sad to lose him. I know, Daniel, you had an opportunity to work with him on the traffic committee, and maybe you want to say 1 or 2 things, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think that your words are very meaningful in the fact that this is a man who worked hard to keep us safe. And it's tragic, his passing, being hit by a vehicle crossing the road. And this is the same man who worked to ensure that our pedestrian crosswalks here in Auburn and probably other cities around our region were safe. And so appreciative of him and his firm's dedication to our betterment of our traffic and safety of our residents. So it is a huge loss. And I know he was working on a number of projects, even as recent. So big loss for our city.
Big loss, and my condolences, our condolences to his family, of course, and his Del Oro family as well. I know that he was very active in the wrestling community. So anyway, we will be adjourning the meeting in the memory of both Ken and Jeff today. Moving along, next item on the agenda is the agenda approval. Are there any suggested changes to the agenda as proposed? Anybody have any comments or questions? Are there any public comments on the agenda? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of the council?
I move we approve the agenda as is.
I'll second that.
Moved and approved, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Amara,
Yes.
Berlant,
Aye.
Holmes, Riddell Harris. Aye. Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
All right, let the record show the motion has been adopted as we move to the next item, which is our consent calendar. We have items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on consent. I would like to remove item number 7. Council, is there any other questions or comments on the consent calendar?
M7 as well.
7, okay. Any other council members?
I'll remove item number 8.
Number 8? All right. Is there any comment from the public on the consent agenda as proposed? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the council? Do I have a motion to adopt the consent calendar as amended?
I'll move to adopt the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Amara,
Yes.
Berlant,
Aye.
Holmes, Riddell Harris. Aye. Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
Aye. Let the record show that the amended consent calendar has been adopted unanimously. Item number 7. Thank you, Mr. Wright. You're going to come up and give us a quick overview of this particular item, please.
Right. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. Jonathan Wright, Community and Economic Development Director, City of Auburn. I apologize. Time has gotten away from us with this matter. I would love to have presented something where there was a little bit more right in the form of an agreement. We'll put the agreement here. So just to back up, we were approached by the Canyons 100 group. It was sponsored by UTMB, Ironman. They put on a great event last April, brought in a lot of people. We've been working with them since, so over the last year, to bring in a bigger event, which as you know now, just by the press that's been out there, it's now becoming a major, so it's a much bigger deal. It's also going to, some of the races are going to start and end in town, which will be even better for our merchants, even better for the exposure to the community. And one of the things we talked about is how we use this as a real marketing tool to get, you know, the name Auburn out throughout the world as the endurance capital of the world. And so part of the sponsorship is so that the city of Auburn's name can be imprinted on all of the awards that are going to be given out that will then go back home to however many different countries they'll take them home to for that exposure that you just can't really put a price on. And the other part is that we already contribute to events. We do in kind as it is for any number of events. And so the other financial contribution is something we would normally do for an event as it stands. So entering into this process with them, they came back with this agreement. Unfortunately, the time has gotten by, and since we're not having a meeting on the 13th, we're pressing to try to get this done for their sake. We've already had an initial discussion with Ironman or with UTMB as well as Canyons. Chaz, I think, is up there. We can talk about or talk to him a little bit. The event host or the event coordinator. And they're perfectly understanding that this is an agreement that was designed for a private entity and not a public entity. We discussed some of the issues there with confidentiality and not being able to perform to those standards because of being a public entity. There's some of the policing requirements with the marketing in there that we're just simply not going to be doing. As the endurance capital, we're going to not prevent or advertise for the events that take place here during the term of this agreement. And they get that. They understand. It's just that this was the only starting place we had. And so unfortunately, that's as good as it got when we sent out the staff report. So it's something that we'll be working with Chaz and that group to ensure that we uphold the image and the reputation as the endurance capital of the world, and we don't do anything to jeopardize any of our other great events out here or to alienate them, violate them, whatever. So I just want that to be clear. I guess at this point I'll pause for comment.
Yes, thank you very much. And I had pulled this off, and I know Councilwoman, you also had some questions. I just wanted to confirm this is it's a 3-year agreement, and the commitment from the council would be a $10,000 contribution for each of the 3 years plus in kind, which covers everything from public works, police, fire, garbage, all of those items that are spelled out in Exhibit B. I did going through this document, and I appreciate the fact that it's very fluid, and I did have this opportunity to speak with Chaz up there on the phone earlier today, and he has assured me that this really is a template and that it is very fluid. There are several provisions, sections 6, 7, 8, 15, and 20, Exhibit A, B1 and D3, I3 that I had some comments on, and I don't want to take all of our time for the council meeting, but I'll get those with you. Really, it's with regards to exclusivity was a concern, the confidentiality,
Sure.
Things of that nature, and the ambush marketing. You know, I just want to ensure that we as a city have the opportunity to advertise Auburn Endurance Capital of the world, that we're not, you know, and we've already started to talk about those things. So I am comfortable knowing that we are in flux on this. And I know that Chaz has indicated that he is 100% willing to work with us and address any concerns that we have. And that gives me some security as well. So I will look forward to working with you to get those concerns addressed in the document. Councilwoman Riddell Harris.
Just a couple of things. When the amendments happen, it sounds like it's the starting point. Will those come back so we can see how things progress to go in? We really need to sign off on everything, but can we also see how things are developing for time? Maybe not every time you amend it, but how it ends up.
If it's the pleasure of the council to later ratify the document, that will suspend this decision till a later date.
I think
No, I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm saying we approve this, but as you make these changes to make it so it makes more sense for a public entity and how things kind of end up shaping out to the real document with the real rules and guidelines kind of, it'd be good to be able to see kind of things end up how they end up shaking.
Yeah,
out. So-
and Councilwoman, so I did have an opportunity to speak with our city manager about this as well. And so when the motion was made, I was going to suggest that when the final product is done, that she share that with us and give a report so that
Great.
we are all clear on what those changes are.
Perfect.
Perfect.
I'm a little confused because you just said 10,000 a year and on the document it says $25,000 a year. So that's not correct. It's
That's
actually
right.
$10,000
That's
a year.
why,
Template plugged in, we still haven't worked. those
Okay,
things.
so that much, okay.
That's all.
Um,
contribution.
It is a bigger, I know that we contribute to other events and I'm really excited about this. I'm not at all saying anything negative. I'm just want to make sure we have our T's crossed. So this is a much larger event than we normally do in kind for. So I was hoping that Nathan, and our financial staff could just keep track of how much we're, in addition to how much we're giving the money we're giving them,
Right.
how much in kind we're really spending on this. So we get a kind of a sense of what the budget is that we need to account for this every year. So I think this first year would be a good chance to kind of make sure we're capturing the hour, make sure we're capturing all of the different things that we're contributing. So that way we kind of have an overall sense of what the budget really needs to be for this event. Because I don't think we quite know at this point.
We quantified based off of the last event.
Mhm.
But this
What-
is bigger than last.
This is gonna be bigger.
Yeah.
So this was an inflated number in anticipation of the larger event.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, I just want to make sure we're kind of tracking
As a
it so we
guest
can get a
judge.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. This is it looks like it's gonna be 3 blocks are gonna be closed from Thursday to Sunday-ish, Monday morning. So I just wanted to make sure that we're gonna develop a communication plan. I know in there it says there's required notification, but in there it's mainly talking about residents and businesses that are just around those 3 blocks. And I want to make sure that the city knows it is a way that a lot of people get through town, and 3 days of not having 3 blocks that is a fairly frequently used 3 blocks, I think is important that though I know that a lot of people are super excited about this event and I am too, there may be people who aren't quite as excited about the traffic and the closed blocks. So I just don't want anyone to be surprised and want to make sure that everyone's aware of what's going on. And then, and there also, it talked about us doing all the maintenance and cleanup for the event for those 3 days and making sure that everything is done. Do we have enough maintenance staff to handle a 3-day event 24 hours a day cleaning up, or do we need a contract out to get some help with that?
We're gonna work with Chaz and have their folks do the preliminary. That would just be final cleanup after the
Okay,
event.
final cleanup. Okay, because in the contract it said the whole time. Okay, and one more quick thing. It said something about host branded items. Is that just are we planning on branding?
Those
things?
are like, for example, the Endurance Capital of the World. We have quite a bit of swag that we hand out for different events. And so that's what they're talking about. And one of the things I want to do is I want to make sure that the racers and the volunteers get two pieces from the city of Auburn. They can get a swag, but I also want them to have information about the city, helpful information since they are here and for economic development
Okay,
purposes.
so we'll just need to make sure we have the budget in order to be.
Yeah, and
Right.
the Endurance Capital of the World committee has a pretty healthy budget and we have lots of swag. So
Okay,
that's
wanted
why
to make sure.
Jonathan and I will work on some of those aspects of it, just because of the Endurance Capital of the World will be very involved in this
Right.
event.
Okay, great.
Chaz knows that.
Okay, that's all I had. I'm really excited. I just wanted to make sure we're tracking everything.
Good.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Amara?
Amara, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and I appreciate this being brought forward. I'm very excited about this. I think it's a wonderful opportunity, and I really want to just take this time to thank you for working this through. And I know it's only our second year, and this is a fluid document. I read it. There's many things that you're going to be hashing out, and our mayor is here to help you. That's fantastic. I think the key to this whole thing, though, is I agree with Councilwoman Riddell Harris. Communication. So we just have to communicate and keep this thing in the open and have our business association and businesses very aware, and so that they can be understand what's coming and be hopefully supportive. And I know they will be. So this is fantastic, and what a great opportunity. Thank you for the hard work. Appreciate it.
Any other questions from the council? All right, we'll open this up for public comment. Is there any public comment on this item?
Mayor Dowden Calvillo, I do want to say that Chaz has his hand raised. I think
Oh.
on Zoom, he may want to say something.
Would you like to say something, Chaz?
Yes, please. Thank you all very much for letting me join in and taking this time out of your meeting and working with us. It's a huge help, and we're excited to partner with the city of Auburn. On the closure of the street, it's actually going to be opened up around the last racer should be finishing at 5 p.m. on Saturday. So it should take about an hour or 2 hours, maybe 3, to clear everything and reopen the street. So it'll be back Saturday evening, not Monday morning.
Oh, great. That's important.
That's
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, I'll bring this back then to the council at this time, since there is no public comment on this item. And I would ask that, in addition to what we have here stated as a recommendation for the resolution, that we also ask our city manager to bring back the final product to the council, just so that we can see what the document actually is. She will report on it. So is there a motion?
I move we approve of a host venue agreement with World Triathlon Corporation, subject to staff and legal review revisions, and authorize the interim city manager to sign all documents and bring it back to the city council. And number 2, find that the host venue agreement is exempt from CEQA review by Title 14, Section 15061B3, common sense exemption.
I'll second.
Wow. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Twice.
Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Amara.
Yes.
Berlant.
Aye.
Holmes. Riddell Harris.
Aye.
Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
Aye, let the record show that the motion has been adopted unanimously. Thank you very much, council. Next item on the agenda, consent item number 8, which is 1103 High Street Roof Replacement Project. Councilwoman Amara, was that you pulled that
Yes,
item?
yes. And it's just to say that I'm pleased that we are keeping our buildings up and taking care of them. I remember that this was a point of discussion, and I'm very happy and pleased that we are keeping our buildings up. And I hope we do the same for Carnegie and some of the other historic buildings that we own in town, because at some point in time, they become very important to us. And right now, the chamber and the endurance capital that is going to occupy 1103 High Street is important to us. So I have no questions. I just want to say that we do need to make sure that all of our buildings are kept up, at least the frame. And I appreciate that. So I'm happy. I have no questions. Thank you.
And the good news is that, of course, this council did appropriate $150,000, $75,000 in each of the 2 fiscal years to both 1103 High Street and to Carnegie, and for just things like this. So
Yeah.
that the $54,000 will be coming out of that $150,000 that was appropriated. So
Right.
we did the right thing.
Okay.
All right. Is there any, yes, Councilman Holmes?
Yes, well, I have, have some comments about 1103 High Street. And
About the roof?
About the roof.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
I just wondered if it was about just in general, but please proceed.
Well, it is in general as well, but nevertheless,
Oh.
I'm surprised that we have not tried to get California Cultural and Historic Endowment funds to take care of the old City Hall, 1103 High Street, plus the Carnegie Library Building. When we did the daylighting of the stream, which is now the Auburn Park Preserve, we got about $500,000 from the California Cultural and Historic Endowment Fund to restore the amphitheater in that area. And it seems to me that since both of these buildings are on the National Register of Historic Places, that they would be good opportunities to apply for those endowment funds to take care of both of those buildings. So I just raised that as whether any thought had been given to doing that.
Well, I thank you very much for raising that, and I will absolutely let the Western States Trail Museum Board of Directors know about that. I remember that we did secure those funds for the daylighting at the School Park Preserve. I don't think that we took any of that into consideration with, we appropriated the $150,000 from ARPA, so that's where that was coming from.
Yeah.
But I think that's very helpful information going forward because there is a lot of work that needs to be done there. So thank you very much, Councilman. I appreciate that. All right. Is there any other comment on that item? Okay. Public comment? Any public comment on this item? Hearing none, I'll bring it back to the council. What's your pleasure?
Madam Mayor, I will make a motion that we authorize the Public Works Manager to execute a service agreement with Gold Country Roofing for the 1103 High Street Roof Replacement Project.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Amara,
Yes.
Berlant,
Aye.
Holmes,
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
Aye. Let the record show the motion has been adopted unanimously. Next item on the agenda is public comment. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to address the council on an item not scheduled for today's agenda. We can't take action on said items, but we can certainly refer them to staff and they may come back for subsequent action by the council if appropriate. So with that said, I'd like to open up public comment. Any public comment? Yes, please come up and introduce yourself to our lectern.
Yes, good evening, Madam Mayor and council people. My name is Rick Dusty. I live on Grandview Drive in Grand Oak subdivision. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about tonight is we repaved Auburn Folsom Road from Lincoln down to Sunrise Ridge. And when they paved it, they didn't put any reflectors on the striping. So Indian Hill Road, which comes up to it, has reflectors on the yellow striping in the median. And all the way up Auburn Folsom until you get to Sun Ridge where the new pavement starts, there's reflectors, but not on the new part. It's from Sunrise Ridge to Lincoln. And if you drive that at night when it's raining particularly, you cannot see the stripes at all. And we have particularly around Madhu Drive where it goes from 2 to 1 and it's got different turnout things and everything else. It's quite confusing because it's very wide. And so I've driven that couple times at night coming back from dinner during these storms and you just can't see the stripes. So I think it's a real hazard out there that I'd like to see some reflectors put there. Thanks.
Thank you. It may be that they're not finished yet. So I'm getting the big nod. So they will be installed. It's not a finished product yet. So do we have a time frame for that? Okay, well,
Right on.
there you go. Tomorrow morning. Report back to us next time if there aren't there. Thank you very much.
Was it delayed because of the storms?
Weather and there was miscommunication.
Oh,
okay. Thank you.
Well, they put them out, the wind blows them right down off. I don't know. Yeah. All right. Is there any other public comment? All right, seeing none, we will move along to the next item on the agenda, and this is under council business. And we have an informational presentation on the form-based code project. And recipient of Green Means Go
Right.
funds from SACOG.
Oh, yes, we actually networked, I think it's 5 different grants to make this happen. So I'd like to introduce Genevieve Marsh Designs. If you recall, it was over a year ago that we actually went out for an RFQ to try to solicit interest in this project. And it took us another 6 months to find the right talent for this project. And since we have a new interim city manager, we have a new sitting council member, we decided now is the right time to give everybody an update of where we're at and how things are going. So I will turn it over to Genevieve.
Is this the clicker? Okay. Good evening, council members. As Mr. Wright said, I am Genevieve Marsh from Genevieve Marsh Design Group, and we are your consultant team for the form-based code project. The public-facing name of the form-based code project is Imagine Auburn. And tonight I'm here to give a brief progress update and also a little refresher on what it is we are trying to do. So Imagine Auburn is all about stewarding a community vision and translating that vision into an amendment for the zoning code for the commercial core area. The 2 main objectives of this project are to cultivate the beloved character of Auburn within future changes to the commercial core and to also simplify the development process. The project area is from I-80 to High Street and the main street on Sacramento Street in Old Town up to the new Old Town Pizza near the railroad bridge that you go under to get to the river. That includes about 500 parcels. And our project team is made up of entirely local professionals, reflecting the different priorities that the council had in the RFP, an economic development perspective, robust community outreach perspective, and then also the three main design fields of urban design, architecture, and landscape architecture. In addition to that, Mr. Wright has facilitated a collaboration with RGS, Regional Governmental Services, to provide planner feedback on what we've been doing, and that's been a very effective collaboration. So our project has 4 main phases, and we started work in September. And right now we are coming to the end of the documentation phase. Form-based code starts with identifying the existing character and built environment of Auburn. And we have a lot of character and a lot of variety, and we've been hard at work at that rapidly for the last almost 4 whole months now. In March, as we transition into the visioning phase, we're going to be doing a charrette series with the community. And that's where we really get to build upon all of the existing conditions that we've identified and cataloged, and figure out where, as a community, we would like to go from where we are now. We are still on track for our final deliverables to be to you in September. So the documentation phase is really very robust, and the goal is to take the entire commercial core area and catalog the components that make it up and identify any major factors that affect multiple sites. And this goes way beyond identifying different styles. Style is kind of like the lipstick layer of what makes up the town. We have neighborhoods and districts that are certain shapes, and they interrelate in different ways. We have blocks of totally different dimensions. We have all kinds of parcel sizes, multiple building types. And the form-based code looks at all of that and gets down to the style as well. In our documentation phase, we started with the most zoomed out point of view, which is looking at districts and neighborhoods. And we used a transect approach, which looks at the density of existing areas. And what you can see kind of with the quality of the projector here is a redder zone in the map on the right that is more towards the middle of the colored area. And that is the heart of downtown. That's the most dense area where buildings share walls. And then next to that, we have an orange area, which is this interstitial space between the tight pack of downtown and the residential neighborhoods, where there's still big buildings, but there's also they're more spaced out and more parking lots, and then the residential in yellow. And some interesting discoveries that we make at this scale in looking at the composition of these different areas is where there may be the most amount of opportunity and where there may realistically be the most amount of change. The interstitial zone between down the main stretch and the residential areas, this orange area, is our currently the most mixed use zone in town. That was very interesting. I think the bias would be to assume that it's that most mixed use zone would be the main street drags. And then the realistic scale of change is another very interesting way of looking at the project area. And it assesses the quality of the buildings as they are now in relation to the land value to assess if somebody were to buy this property, what would they do to it? Would they be more likely to renovate it or keep it as it is or build something new there? And that's all important because we need to keep within our capacity of the EIR. And so knowing what is realistic helps us target more how we may allocate growth. We found two types of challenges that are affecting a variety or the multitude of parcels. One of them is slope. We have about half the parcels have a slope of greater than 10 feet from one side to the other change, which means that you could potentially have access from two different levels. And then we also, and that's more of a function of the building form and affecting building form. And it affects things like how we define height, how high you can build, and how one must access a building. And then the other factor is structure age. In a conservative estimate, half of the parcels in the project area are over 50 years old. And this adds additional level of complexity to moving through the planning department, as well as additional rules for building the building department. So from that larger scale neighborhood district size view, we identified 8 blocks that were characteristic of a particular transect. And we centered our blocks on a street. So instead of taking a bunch of parcels that are surrounded by streets, we made a block out with a street running through the middle and then the parcels on either side, because we are most interested in how buildings contribute to the public life of the street. So this centers that as the focus. And we visited these 8 blocks and we did a huge amount of data capture about every one of the parcels in those 8 blocks to figure out how different buildings are configured in these different areas on their parcels and how they aggregate along the street, and what is that relationship they have with each other and with the public space. From evaluating the results of our block analysis, we found types of buildings and frontages and thoroughfares and civic spaces that repeated a lot. And those are what is typical of Auburn. Those are like the main DNA strands. And once we had identified what the 4 main building types are and the 7 main civic spaces are, et cetera, we then went back into the project area and surveyed examples of that beyond the individual blocks that we had identified them in. And that creates a set of standards about what actually makes a large detached building versus a small detached building or a small attached building. And so in this process, it's very much about honing in, simplifying a huge amount of data so that we end up with a kit of parts. And this kit of parts is useful not only in making a clear regulating plan and regulating code, but it's also useful for the community in our charrette process because we have all of these parts that we can now play with on a map and make this very, very physical and creative rather than just abstract. And I think that's part of the power of what a form-based code is. Parallel to that, we have been exploring community insight. We have been identifying stakeholders, and we've been doing this in several ways. We have interviewed 25 individual community leaders from a variety of sectors, people who work on various committees, work in the nonprofit space, business owners, property owners, and then also developers. in a very open format kind of interview, trying to get a sense of what their point of view is about the constraints and opportunities of their reality in Auburn. This is informing our charrette series, where we'll do a series of focus groups and collaborative visioning exercises. And then you may have also noticed this delightful portal in the art park. And that is our kiosk touch point. And with that kiosk touch point, we have been able to reach a very different group of people than you can get calling up business owners on the phone and different organizations. And so we've gotten 100 responses through that kiosk for our survey. And our survey was pretty long. So that is really good. And the point of that survey is to gauge the capacity for change in the area. And I'm excited for those results to be coming out soon. And that's what I wanted to share with you. That's a whirlwind of our massive data project right now. You will be receiving a report of all of this work thus far, summarized nicely in the next few weeks for more perusal. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much for all your work. Really do appreciate it. This is a great thing for Auburn, so we're very appreciative. Council members, are there questions? Councilwoman Amaro?
Thank you. Excellent work. I really appreciate it. So you're at the documentation section then right now. Is that right?
The very end of it, where we've finished our capturing data and we're finishing analyzing that and packaging that.
Good. And next will be the vision.
Mm-hmm.
But that it seems to me you've been acquiring input for that as well, or how does that, what does that entail, the vision part?
So the vision part entails bringing together people from across the community.
Mhm.
It includes the people that we've interviewed and the people connected to the people that we've interviewed and more. So we're trying to build a really diverse community group for the charrette series. And in that charrette series, we will review the main types that the design team has identified through this research, review types of civic spaces and buildings that maybe we'd want to consider, work with the community to discuss if streets should be more active or more quiet, and if there should be more little parklets in certain areas or less. And so that's a very creative element of the charrette series. And then there's another that's more practical, where we've identified some topics that the community seems to really care about in relation to the FBC that can inform it. And so the charrette will have focus groups on those topics that we know people are already interested in discussing.
Okay. And so with the visioning, you're involving many people. Are you also involving the property owners that will be affected along the corridor that you're looking at?
Yes, we have already spoken to several, and they will be invited through multiple outlets of invitation, from the Auburn Journal to press releases and major newsletters and social media accounts, and also the email list that we've been garnering as we've gone through this process. We are not going to snail mail letters directly to property owners because that can be seen as a little aggressive. So we're trying to make sure everybody knows what's going on in a very friendly way.
Okay. Okay. And then after the visioning, you have the assembly and adoption. So when do you expect the whole process? I know you can't give a date certain, but approximately.
We are on target to deliver the form-based code document to Jonathan in September. And from there, Jonathan presents it for adoption.
September. Okay.
Is that right, Jonathan?
Very close. We are going to be working with RGS after this to get the land use element portion done. and all of the required updates to the general plan and so forth that have to happen. So she's going to turn in her part, which is phase one, then phase two is the actual implementation. So the adoption may take some time after that.
After that, okay, and just a quick question might involve you. So your part then won't include like bike lanes and that kind of street type stuff as well, or is that more the after?
That's in my ballpark.
Okay, it is. Okay, good.
The architectural design of the space.
And what about like the addressing Airbnbs in town? Is that something that will be addressed by the time we've completed this whole process?
She looks at form, density, design, and so forth. The land use portion of this, which would be RGS, will look more at those uses too that they can plug in, but she's going to advise that part of the project through her work.
Okay, good, great. Okay, and then just for last question for clarity, this doesn't involve Auburn Folsom then? It's just High Street down to 80, you said?
Let's bring up the map again, because we do include the final intersection of Auburn Folsom.
Yeah, Lincoln and Albert.
Mhm. Does this have a laser on it?
It's right in the
Towards-
beginning.
More towards the
Yes,
beginning.
right
Oh.
there.
So there's the laser. This is Auburn Folsom. And so this one block of Auburn Folsom from, this is the main entrance to the fairgrounds here.
Okay,
Mhm. High Street,
Yeah.
Sacramento Street, up to the courthouse here.
okay, thank you. That
Mhm.
clarifies it. And that's all the questions I have. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Uh,
Councilman Holmes?
Yes, in the 1960s, a survey was done of buildings in Auburn based on their historical value. Have you reviewed that as well to include those findings in this particular process?
We have reviewed 6 different lists that have been locally produced of historical assets in Auburn. And they all have different parcels on them. And also the architectural guidelines, the historical architectural guidelines book. That's a really good summary of it as well. And then we've also done some mapping of building age through looking at the tax records. So there's a lot of different kinds of classifications of what is historically significant. And that's a major factor in doing any project in this area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, my original understanding was that part of the results of this would be to perhaps have more people living in the downtown area. Am I correct in that?
That is one of the things that we've been told to work on.
And have you come to any
Well,
conclusions yet, or?
No, because we have a community engagement phase.
Okay,
they're going through the process, but that's definitely on their list.
yeah,
of
okay,
things.
all right, thank you.
Yes, Councilwoman?
Turn it off again. Sorry. In the visioning process, you said there's a lot of sending out of invitations to folks
Mhm.
for these charrettes. Is there anything that's just open to the public and whoever wants to come, or is it
Yes.
only by
Yes, it
invitation?
is.
Okay, great. Thank you.
From my experience, an open invitation to the public draws less people than if we combine that with
No, I agree.
targeted.
Yeah, no. And then the other question is there any attempt to go to folks who may be harder to reach, like maybe PTCs, parents and folks who may be harder to get to come to a charrette where they're invited versus going out and trying to reach those more busy folks, I guess, who may not be able to reach as easily?
You mean like bringing together stakeholder groups in their own location and going and interviewing them.
Yeah, just the places that you know that people already beat, like Rotaries and PTCs and things like that, where they already live and already have a planned meeting, which may be easier to get input that way.
We've done a few presentations to groups and several group interviews in that kind of scenario. And we have a little bit more to do, a few more of those as it arises as as an issue. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Councilman Berlant.
Yeah,
do you have a
thank you,
question?
Madam Mayor. The image that was on the screen earlier, the map showed a square. Our version of the presentation doesn't have that. So I just wanted to confirm.
I don't know what that is.
Okay, good. Because I wanted to confirm,
Oh.
is that the commercial core? And I assumed that previous to that square, that it was everything that is in the white color, though hard to see in this image, correct? It's okay.
Oh,
You assume
Here I was.
correctly.
here I was drawing the square on my page because so thank you very much.
Yeah.
So it's
Thank you.
just, yes, I
Thank you.
thought that it was a much larger, we did some form-based code. Jonathan, didn't we originally, years or maybe a year ago or something? Did we not?
Yeah, we came back, the RFP had the map in there of the area we wanted.
Yeah,
True.
but we just, but I thought we just looked at like the fairgrounds or something
We
or,
included the fairgrounds in that one.
we
but
have
we-
extended, okay.
Due to cost, we had to suck that back in a little bit.
Okay, good. All right. That's easier to read. Now we can see the contrast. Thank you very much. So it's that white area. Because I know you had indicated it was 500 parcels. And so I was thinking, I don't know how we have 500 parcels in that square. Thank you, Councilman Berlant, for
Yeah.
questioning the
Yeah.
square. It was the Bermuda Square.
And that's all my question. I'll just say, just impressed by the presentation, knowing that we haven't even gotten the results or, the next three phases of this, but just the level of complexity and level of detail you guys have thought through already is a little overwhelming. So, which I know means that by the time we get to the adoption process, we're going to have a really strong product. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I'm very appreciative as well. This is moving quite, right along and thank you for staying on target and just it's innovative and I'm really looking forward to the end result. So thank you for the update very much. Any public comment on this item? Yes, we do have public comment. Come on up.
I hadn't planned to speak, so I may be a little bit disjointed. To be perfectly candid, I'm
Oh, if you just identify yourself for the record, thank you.
164 Tennis Way. And I should mention for way of background, I do have a background as a business writer, public information officer for Placer County, and a planning commissioner in Davis. I'm concerned what I heard tonight. It was a very impressive presentation, but one that to me was kind of tailored if you were giving it to a group of professionals. I think things have to be structured and the outreach has to be more geared to the public. I think I understood much of what was said tonight, but I don't think the public will. That's a minor aside, but the main thing I don't understand, and maybe I just missed it. And I should mention, Davis likes to try every new thing. And so I've been through a lot of things like this, and they often don't turn out how you expect. It was unclear to me tonight how the nuts and bolts of zoning and planning would work together. Would you abandon traditional zoning? I guess it's unclear to me if I owned a parcel and wanted to tear down my building and build a new one. Given my background, I know how I would proceed under current zoning and planning. I don't quite understand how that would happen with this form-based zoning. I did do a little research and it is controversial. I guess all I'm saying is please go through this with your eyes wide open and make sure the nuts and bolts of how projects would be reviewed and approved in the future under this kind of zoning.
Madam Mayor,
Yes,
may I ask a follow-up question that maybe might resolve
yes.
your concern? I had to Google it, so just to be honest with you, but maybe you could define for us the March charrettes and what that means, and as far as stakeholder meetings, et cetera, that are still yet to be to happen.
Charrettes are workshops, like a series of workshops of different sized groups with different kinds of engagement activities.
So the ability for the public to dive a little deeper, or maybe to get a version that is not as complex, and maybe that's not the right word, but able to answer that specific group. That's what you are planning to do in March. Is that
Yes.
correct based on the slide?
Yes, and we give a very different presentation when we're talking to somebody that we're about to interview. This presentation is geared more towards you all who have been involved in the RFP process and have a level of understanding of what we're going for already. And we will be getting to the nuts and bolts, but the nuts and bolts, you don't design nuts and bolts until you've designed districts.
Great.
So.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully that answers some of the questions, that there are still more meetings to dive further into it for the public. So thank you.
Jonathan, after this is all done, can we make process maps so that way it's clear how a project goes through the process? And since we will have folks that are migrating from our old process to our new process, sometimes it just helps to have a
Right.
bit of mapping out. These are all the key
Right.
pieces to the project, and this is how you move through, and here are all the approval kind of points.
Part of the next phase with RGS, which will actually be coming to you in, I believe, March, will be to do the training phase for our staff as well. So it'd be to go straight through the process. So in that phase, we'd also want to have training materials that we could provide to staff and to the public. So
And
I
maybe we
agree.
could even have a training or two that we pay for folks who are developers or who want to work in the city, contractors who need to get through the permitting process, and that
Great
they could
idea.
come and listen to.
Yep, great idea.
And maybe just a really, a quick way to say this is that this is really looking at, you're focusing on the physical outcome, the form versus the use. And so you have that uniform form of your area, and that's why you're doing this outreach and so forth. How do people vision? So it's a little bit different than, just focusing your development on use. You're focusing your development based on form, on the physical attribute of what you're looking at. So
Right. And just to
in
clarify,
layman's terms, maybe
this-
that helps. I don't.
this will be a hybrid. So we will have land use provisions in there as well as the form characteristics. So
Mhm.
it should be fairly self-explanatory through the documents that we
Mhm.
produce. Again, one of the questions was about density. Yes, it's the idea is to create more of a village atmosphere, increase the density where we can, and try to find more ways to get housing into our downtown core. It's to protect the historic resources. Right now, if you have a non-historic structure, you have to go through the HDRC to say tear down your building, which would take, it's a hearings process that you have to go through. It takes quite a while to do. Then you have to go back to the permitting process, and you go back to these multiple layers. This would hopefully eliminate a lot of those barriers and make it more of a prescriptive type of a permit. So you come in, if it meets the characters and the defined criteria that's within that district, and it's one of those approved uses, you're moving from point A to point B. So,
More predictable.
and easier to explain to people.
Yep. Any other questions or comments from the council? Okay, do we have any additional public comment on this item? Hearing none, thank you very much. That was just an informational item for tonight's purposes, so we won't take action, but we do appreciate the update and look forward to your continued great work on this. Okay, we're going to move right along on the agenda, and next item is our item number 11, the fire fee schedule study. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, fellow council members. For the record, Dave Spencer, your fire chief. The item before you tonight is our fire fee schedule. This will be the first time that our fee schedule has actually gone through this process and validated the actual costs that are incurred in doing inspections. So I wanted to give just a quick background about our inspection programs and really why we do that. The focus is strategic in risk focused for life safety inspections, which includes our businesses. It focuses on community education, risk awareness. And as you know, certainly over the last several years, we've been spending a lot of time with regard to our wildfire threat. But it is just as important to stay focused on our downtown businesses as we were just talking about. And we want to educate our business and property owners about the risks that we perceive and face. When we talk about our inspection services, it's about our building occupancies, businesses, community care licensing, new developments, wildfire structure assessments, and WUI defensible space inspections. As I indicated, the city of Auburn has not done a fire fee schedule, a formal fire fee schedule like we're looking at today. The city of Auburn hired MGT Consulting Group back in September to do a time-based fee analysis update. Now, we do talk about adding 70 new fees, but they're not really new fees. They're simply inspections that we haven't been doing. Most of that revolves around capacity. And we wanted to make sure that while we were doing this process, that we captured everything that we potentially would do. It's not to say that there may be an inspection that's listed on ours that may not be in existence, but we want to make sure that we have captured that so that we're not in a place where we're trying to do an inspection and just pick a fee out of thin air. The objective was to calculate true costs based on our fees and identify the needs to recover costs. As we've talked about many times, the cost of doing business within the city, if we don't recover those fees, it comes out of the general fund. And so it's really important that we assess that and we capture what the actual cost is, not less, not more, just the actual cost of doing that business. We'll provide an estimate of revenue projected based on doing all of those things. And we want to make sure that we keep pace with inflation and any changes on the go forward. We want to ensure that we're in compliance with state laws and governing uses for fees and recovery. Now, with regard to study methodology, I want to bring Diana Hancock in if we could to kind of walk us through the process as she's a subject matter expert. And so all right, Diana, are you on with us? It looks like she's muted. Oh, there we go.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now.
There you are. Hi, Diana.
Good evening, everybody. Hi, Chief.
So we'll get back to our presentation here in just one
So,
second.
Chief, did you want me to kind of explain the methodology?
Yeah, that's exactly where we're at.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, in a nutshell, the methodology is really pretty basic. It's what we do is we calculate the hourly rates of the staff who are providing the service and or contractors as the case may be. And then we interview staff, we interview subject matter experts, and we have them provide the average time required to provide each service for which they're currently charging a fee or potentially could charge a fee. It's based on a good faith estimate, backed up by any data they may have. But this is the best practice industry-wide for how to calculate a fee for service. And when we say we calculate the hourly fee, we include, all costs to the city, including salaries, benefits, and any associated departmental overhead and citywide overhead. So Again, we identified the staff members involved with these specific services. We worked very closely with Chief Spencer pretty exclusively throughout this whole study. And, you know, he's a subject matter expert if there ever was one, that's for sure. We calculated the direct labor and any associated materials costs, added in the indirect costs, and then applied that hourly rate to the average time to provide the service. And that's how we come up with the cost to the city to provide the service. And then we compare that to the current fee, and you know, we show if the city is currently under recovering that cost or over recovering. One of those columns there has a percentage calculation. If it's over 100, that means the city is the department is currently charging more than it costs. In most cases in this study, the department was charging less than it actually cost. Those were the results of our findings.
Great, Diana. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to have you stay with us as we walk through the rest of this. This is an example of the spreadsheet that her staff put together, really outlining where we're at, what things that we're not recovering at all or under recovering, and the timeframes that are associated with that, the annual volume. This is the projection, and this is the assumption that if we were to do every single inspection that we had listed on our spreadsheet of what the annual revenue would look like based on the time commitment. And then finally, recommendations from MGT and their staff is to either tie it to CPI or to a COLA increase so that we stay current over the scope of time. And so tonight, this is a discussion item for the council, and we're looking for recommendations and thoughts. MGT recommends that we continue to invest in this cost of service and continue to analyze our fees and update this regularly. Once we've made that commitment, we'll just continue to keep pace as we move forward. That being said, with regard to next steps for tonight, we're presenting this information. What we're going to do is bring forward on February 27th, the notice of public hearing and adoption at that time. So tonight we won't be doing an adoption. And then from that point forward, we will allow for the 60-day period. And that will be April 27th, in which the fees will go into effect. In addition to that, one of the things that is a regular discussion is the parcel inspections. And so now that we have this process completed and we know what that looks like, we will do a town hall meeting here late February, early March, or probably more than one to get input from our community members and talk about how we want to roll those parcel inspections out. Our business inspections is pretty straightforward and has been a regular best practices process that almost every fire department, certainly in the state and in the nation, do. And so that's a relatively easy process to identify. The parcel inspections is the one that maybe has some discussion and certainly some area that we can talk about. And then at that point, then we'll come back to the council and present what our findings were and what the recommendations are and how we'll move forward. And so with that, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Chief. Appreciate it greatly. I'm sure there are questions here for the council. Councilman Berlant.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Chief, for spending the time. Nobody likes to talk about fees, but it is important, as your presentation noted, to make sure that we are recovering costs that are borne by the general taxpayer that have a benefit to a specific person or group. I'm going to set aside my questions about the residential defensible space for a moment. The methodology for the fees makes sense to me, but I am curious if you have any information or our contractors any information on where this new fee kind of sets us regionally. as far as these fees. I fully understand that the fee is set based on our actual cost to Auburn, unique to us. But are we, are we where our partner cities and counties in this region are in these fees?
I had that on my list of questions.
I'm glad we are on the same
Mhm.
page, and my guess
Yep.
is we all want to make sure that we're not overcharging what somebody near us is doing.
Yeah, so I'll lightly walk through this and indicate to you that we did look at the region surrounding us, both, our local areas and certainly, Rockland, Roseville, Placer Hills, all these other agencies that were similar to us. So my labor group might be pleased when I tell you that I think we're low because it's based on our hourly rate. And so, as you know, we're in the middle of a process of doing our salary survey. And so I think truly, when you look at other fees across the region, we're certainly low on a large scale. And so I think that's the simple answer.
Okay, well, I think you did a good job pending negotiations with our hardworking firefighters. But thank you. I think that at least the short answer, answers the question that we are in line, if not lower, than other areas. A couple questions that I have related to implementation of the fee. I'm curious what the city's municipal code and/or fire department policy is as far as which inspections are you actually doing? And maybe you can, for us and even me, differentiate what is, more or less one-time inspections for new construction versus state mandated, schools, apartments, health facilities, daycares, et cetera, versus are there any types of occupancies or in this very long, complex fee schedule, are there specific inspections that we are mandated locally that we are going to do? Just trying to get a sense of which of these are on the books, but which are we actually going to go out and do?
Yeah, so great question. And so what I'll tell you is that part of this is that as a relatively young fire department, moving from a volunteer to a professional or paid staff, inspections is part of the normal process and practice. It's in our core mission to provide prevention, and that's that preventative effort to try to keep our businesses safe. So what that means is that we do annual inspections on our local businesses to ensure that they're not only compliant with the law, but also doing the things that are best practices. The example that's very common in a B2 occupancy, if you will, a simple business, is that they have a multi-plug adapter that's plugged into another multi-plug adapter that's plugged into another one. And those are common causes of ignition sources that actually burn down businesses. And so by getting into these businesses and doing these inspections, we really prevent significantly dollar loss and business loss, because we know that once there's a fire in a business, there's really a less than 3% probability that business will go back into that same location or come back at all. So that would be the example of the businesses. Many of the inspections rely or revolve around the actual hazards. Welding and cutting, for example, is a really good example where you have flammable gases and you have an ignition source, the actual flame. And so we need to make sure that business is doing those things according to code and providing all of the safety features that they need to have. And so, and then the final component of this is the idea that our firefighters are now getting into the businesses and buildings that get them some familiarity, so that when there is, or if there is, or when there is a fire, that they have some identified areas and knowledge base of our local businesses. And so that's really a critical importance for us as firefighters. It not only protects our community, but it also protects our firefighters from injury and exposure.
Thank you for that. Let me come back though. There's 115 fees in this schedule. Does the municipal code or your policy state that we are going to do all 115 of these every year, or are some of these one-time items, as-need items, et cetera?
Yeah, so it's a mix of both. Certainly, new construction is a one-time fee. So there are many that are a one-time fee. You know, I would have to go through and break them all down, but the reality is that our businesses will be an annual inspection. And when there's a operation within that business that triggers a permit, that is part of that process. And I use the welding and cutting as an example, is that in order to do that, they have to have a permit to do so. And so that's what triggers that process.
Got it. So my last question here is I just want to make sure we're all on the same page related to the defensible space, WUI. I think this calls it the residential, maybe
Parcel
parcel,
inspection.
yeah, inspection. So what I got from your presentation and our discussion is that tonight you are asking us to set the rate, but that to actually bring it into the municipal code where we are going out and providing those inspections and thus assessing a fee potentially is yet to be determined. That's what you're doing in the next several months as far as workshops, and then you'll bring it back to this council for a decision on what that fee, if there's a fee, when that would and where that would take effect. Is that correct?
Yeah, so next steps with regard to the residential parcel inspections will be meeting with our community members. Once we have that meeting and have all that discussion and figure out what holes we may be missing, what problems we may need to address, then at that point, we will actually move forward with an ordinance, and that ordinance will go into the municipal code to do the parcel inspections. And so at that point, I can't tell you how we will roll that out at this moment because we haven't had those discussions with our large community. We've only had one meeting so far, and that was really focused on AB 38, if you recall. So now we're taking a little bit different direction. And so it's really important to get that feedback and listen to what our community has to say. At the end of the day, I think we're all in agreement that the only way that we can really maintain our community safe from wildfire is to make sure that we're actually touching every parcel within the city. We've done a tremendous amount of work on risk assessments using outside contractors. And we know that the biggest issue for us is about structure to structure ignition within this city. And so we need to do everything we can to protect our community.
Great. Thank you, Chief. I look forward to that discussion and for us to make the hard decision on what that might look like, because we know how important it is, but it is also, cost to the homeowner. And we really want to, and from my perspective, and I'm getting ahead of myself and this topic, so I appreciate that. But we really want to incentivize homeowners to come into compliance. The last comment I'll just make is with business inspections in particular, coming online, if you will, to do more of, and then thus businesses having to pay a fee for it. I would really encourage you to do a lot of upfront communication with our business associations and with our community so that there are no surprises. Because I can remember a time prior to your arrival, the city wasn't even able, based on staffing and other priorities, even able to do its mandated state inspections, let alone doing business inspections that are outside the state mandate. So I think a lot of communication of what businesses can expect and how to help them before the inspection come up to compliance. So that space heaters, daisy chaining of extension cords and the other common things that many, if not almost probably all businesses are doing, they know to start taking time to make some adjustments, because the daisy chaining of extension cords, for example, the offset of doing that is probably a good amount of money of investment into electrical work into a building. Thus the reason why they're doing it a cheaper way. And so giving them that lead time that, this isn't allowed and we're really not going to turn a blind eye anymore, and give them time to come into compliance, I think is really important. But otherwise, I appreciate your presentation and thank you.
Just a quick procedural follow-up to Councilmember Lant. You mentioned a February 27th public hearing and then and adoption. So, but you're asking us to adopt the fee schedule today.
Procedurally, we're not going to adopt it tonight.
Okay. So that I just want to make sure that we're clear. So even though it says on the agenda that we aren't going to, we're going to actually bring this back on February 27th, have another public hearing. This is really a first reading, if you will. It's an introduction is at this point. So
correct.
So that it's clear to everyone that we're not actually going to take action on this item tonight. We're just getting information. So, and I will speak last. So I'll go to Councilwoman Riddell Harris.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. That was a great presentation. It's always interesting to learn how we can do things better. Couple quick questions. It's always easier if these are done on a regular basis. Is the plan to just annually come back with us with updates on this fee schedule?
So one option, and is common with adopting fees, is to put a COLA increase in there and have an information item come back. The reason for that is a little bit of what the mayor and chief were just speaking about on the procedure and public hearing required to change it. If it's adopted with a cost of living adjustment included in it, the city can increase that annually with the cost of living adjustment. The increase isn't required, but could do that automatically without having to go through the procedure of coming back and having a public hearing.
Okay.
The alternative is adopted at a certain dollar amount, and it would simply stay there for a long amount of time. And not to derail the conversation, I wanted to mean just one piece on this amount of the fee, and then I'll hand it back over to you. The data here talks about the current fee and the projected fee and has a percentage. Sometimes it's over 100. I spoke with the chief this afternoon before the meeting. The difference there when it's over 100 is based on the calculations and the hourly rates that were in effect when the original fee was adopted. And that's different than who's conducting the inspections now. So it's not an overcharge in that sense. It is simply a different calculation based on staffing and salaries and how that fee was calculated. And then hand it back over to Councilmember Riddell Harris.
Thank you for that clarification. The other question I had is do you anticipate, we've talked a lot about not having the ability to do inspections. Do you anticipate this creating the opportunity for us to maybe be able to do more of those inspections and meet some of those regulatory requirements that we have?
Well, I think that's absolutely correct. That is how most fire departments fund their prevention program, is through this process. And so obviously we're not going to be able to do that in the first year or first 2 years. So we'll use our line staff to be able to help us get into the businesses. They need to be into the businesses. And then as we grow the program, we'll carve off pieces. And that's why we have our community risk reduction manager. And so you can see that this has been a building process over a period of time, and we'll continue that process and continue to fine tune it, make it more efficient and effective as we move forward.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, Councilwoman.
Thank you very much. I just have a couple of questions. I'm sorry, I'm just a little confused. So you did give us a fee schedule, but it'll be, from what I heard you say, it'll be subject to change, or is this the fee schedule that will eventually come back to us?
Yeah, this is a procedural matter that I consulted with the city attorney on, and that for tonight, what we wanted to do is present this material, but we're going to do a public notice, and then we'll do that again on the date that we identified.
I got it. Thank you. So then, with that being said, I'm also confused on which column. I see the current fee column, like, let's say, for instance, the item number 14, item number 2, the UL 300 hood system. The current fee is the second column, $170.
Slide 8.
And then I'm just,
Which one are you looking at?
I'm just looking at the fee schedule. And I don't know if the slide.
Okay, so the UL 300 hood and duct system.
Yes, it says number 2,
Mhm.
and it says the current fee is $170. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so the new fee, is that way over in item and
So the
163?
So as we look at this, and I might have Diana speak to this, that basically what we did was we took who's doing the inspection, we calculated all the costs, and it's actually $7 less.
Okay.
And so that fee now is reduced to what it actually costs, because we cannot collect over what it actually costs, and we cannot collect under. We need to be right at what the costs are. And Diana, do you want to speak to that at all?
No,
Yeah.
I was confused. I guess I did have the right column.
You did, and you know, this model is a little bit confusing to somebody who just looks at it for the first time. It's just a lot of numbers and percentages and dollar amounts. You're correct. The current fee is, I'm sorry, the full cost is 163, I think. That's kind of small. And the department has the opportunity to recommend, do they want to charge full cost? Do they want to have the city subsidize that fee? The default in MGT's recommendation is to recover full cost. So that fee at policy level is going to be the same as the full cost in almost, I think, every one of these fees.
Good. Okay. Yeah, I see that, the 100%.
Yes.
So when you get down to number 21, 0 to 50 unit subdivision went from $85 to $200.
Yes.
Okay. But these are 100% recovery.
That was the chief's recommendation. Yes.
Okay. And then is it standard in the business then? This is, well, first of all, we haven't done a fee schedule for how many years, or
I don't
not
think we
since
ever
I've
have.
been around.
Well, we had to have done it at some point because we established fees. But I wanted to know that.
It's been
too.
a
I don't
while,
know when
right?
The last time we adopted the fee. I don't know when we adopted these.
I couldn't find any record of doing a contractor
so-
to do this process.
So-
Before
So-
the internet.
Wait, so I'm not really familiar and I understand your methodology. Is it standard to use the benefits as well? Or
Yes. Yes, yeah, what we're trying to show is the full cost to the city. So the city is paying salaries and benefits and overhead, you're paying, utilities, you're paying for office supplies, all that. If it's, if that cost to provide that service is not being paid by the person benefiting from the service, then it has to come from, in this case, the general fund. So that's why the recommendation is in, especially development related fees and fees like these to charge the full cost of what it costs the city to provide that service.
Okay, so, and then just my understanding then, businesses are already, you're already going out to businesses and.
Yeah, and back to Councilmember Barland's question, we I believe 2 years ago, started educating our community businesses by giving them a letter indicating that we're coming out and starting to do inspections. We did provide a checklist, if you will, kind of a self-attestation. We got into COVID and then we backed off of that. And so now we've taken the time to take a pause on doing our business inspections, have this fee schedule done, and then we'll go back and readdress it. So there's been this kind of a start and stop in this process. And so to your point, you're absolutely right. We do need to engage in our business community. We have started that process and it will be familiar to them when we bring this back forward.
Great. Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have. Thank you. very
Great,
much.
thank you. Councilman Holmes?
Yes, well, Chief, you talked quite a bit about businesses and so forth doing inspections there. But for the general public, what kind of inspections for a typical home would that be upon request, or what annual inspection would you be doing without having a special request from the homeowner?
Yeah, so we basically developed and identified all of the parcels within the city limits and have divided them into thirds because that's a manageable piece in which we can touch every parcel. So what we will do in theory is over the course of a calendar year, we will go to every one of those parcels that we've identified for that year, do the inspection and provide that feedback to the homeowner. Now that's where we will get into the discussion in these town hall meetings that we're talking about what are our options? How do we incentivize success of them completing what we want them to do? Those kinds of things. And so that rollout has yet to be determined.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions, Councilman? You're good?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Chief. I appreciate the enormous amount of information. I would have liked to have seen these charts a little bit bigger, maybe for those of us that need assistance. There's a couple of us here, I think. We can get this on a legal sized piece of paper just so that we can, for the next hearing in February. So I did have a couple questions that have been asked. I also wanted to know when the fees were last adopted, but we just don't know because it was so long ago. I do appreciate the fact that we want to have cost recovery. I noticed in here that currently we're subsidizing about 94% of the costs. So that is 94%, which is right now about $338,104 of funds that could be utilized in other facets of fire safety protection. So we could be doing some work for, parcel shaded field break, other kinds of activities. But right now we're subsidizing with that monies. And so that would make a money certainly available to do other important work. Right now we're collecting about $21,000 for those fees. So we're woefully low, and I'm glad that we're at least bringing this back. I think that there will be some additional discussion on some of these amounts. Really what draws my attention is that residential parcel fee, that number 33, the residential parcel inspection, which is a new fee. You're proposing that at $211. Now, did I hear you say that you were going to divide sort of the city up into thirds so that you would inspect each home on a rotating basis? So every 3 years that you would touch a home, is that correct? So every 3 years, according to this schedule, the homeowner would be subject to the inspection and subject to that fee. Is that what you're proposing?
That's correct. That's been our discussion from the beginning of this concept, because that's a manageable piece, because we simply don't have the staff to do all 5,000 parcels in a single calendar year. I think the other part of that is that when we talk about AB 38 and some of the requirements that are associated with that, that at least we can justify that, yes, you're within that 2 or 3 year period that we've actually been to your home. And so we can infer that, there aren't significant changes during that time, and then we come back and readdress it. So
Remind me again what the statute, what was it, AB?
AB 38 is the requirement that when you sell a home that's in a very high severity zone, that you disclose that you're in that zone, and that an inspection has to be completed. And so that was part of the genesis of this discussion at the beginning. And really over the course of time, as we've continued to do our community risk assessment, we've determined that there's just no way for us to keep our community safe without touching every parcel.
So the statute then requires the annual or the inspection upon sale of your home if you are in that high fire severity zone.
Correct.
But discussions just internally have said to us that it would make sense to touch each property, like you said. I think that will be certainly the subject of some additional discussion. I think that, conducting it every 3 years makes a lot more sense than annually. I mean, that's a $211 fee that homeowners are going to, have to pay, that they're not paying now for something they may not even want. Well, I mean, we all have to pay taxes when we're not happy either. I'm sure there's some people that love to do that and pay their dues, but there are others. Anyway, so I know that will be something that will be discussed. I appreciate the fact that we're just opening this up for discussion today, that we will have a lot more discussion and opportunity for public comment on February 27th. So I'd really encourage the public to go online and take a look at the proposed fee schedule. This is just a fee schedule that's been proposed by the consultant at this time, which would give us 100% cost recovery. Now, of course, this council can determine whether or not we want to have 100% cost recovery. We may decide that we only want 80% cost recovery, or it might be, we may have 80% for some and 70 for others, or what have you. So we ourselves will have some homework to do before that February 27th meeting as well, so that we are prepared to have those discussions. The other item too is that CPI and COLA, and whether or not we as a council are interested in rolling that into the fees so that the chief doesn't have to come back to us on a regular basis. And we might also want to think about having a built-in review every 5 years. This comes back, so that it's as part of the direction that we provide, so that we ensure it's on the record that this comes back to us every 5 years. I think because obviously we haven't looked at this in who knows how long. I don't remember ever doing it, and Councilman Holmes, I bet you don't remember either.
No, I don't.
Yes, so we were here a long time ago. So I think that would be important to include that in our discussions when we take on this item on February 27th as well. I do appreciate the amount of outreach that we really do need to do with regards to businesses, but also residents too. And the town hall meetings I think are a great idea. You had mentioned that let's see here, where did I put that information about, we were going to have multiple town hall meetings to discuss the parcel inspection rollouts and so forth. And then your intent would be to have that after the fees were already established, or?
Yeah, so we had to have a starting place
Uh-huh.
because when we did our original town hall meeting with regard to AB 38, there was no way for me to say I got a lot of questions about, well, what would you charge and what would the fee be? And really, it would be irresponsible to just pick a number out of the sky. So that's what embarked us down this process and recognizing that, oh my gosh, we need to do it for all of our fees. And so here we are, where we actually have a true cost that now we have a number that we can work with, up or down. Either way, I think that's where our discussion starts to say we know what the hard costs are and how do we navigate through that process.
And then I also heard you reference the fact that we need to actually enact an ordinance that will allow these parcel inspections in the first place. So I'm just wondering, if we're, right now, we don't have the statutory, when I say ordinance, authority to conduct these annual inspections.
We do,
okay.
but what's important is to capture it in my mind, and I'll defer to the city attorney with regard to the ordinance component of it. I think it's important to be able to put it into the municipal code so that there's clear understanding about what it is that we're trying to do, and so that there's no question.
So is the thought,
yeah.
though, that we would still establish that fee before we establish the language in the municipal code?
So it can be, so the way that I'm reading this fee study, if adopted on the 27th, the fee would be chargeable if a residential customer, for example, asked for an inspection and the fire chief and that
Voluntarily,
department.
someone wanted to have it, or under AB 38, if they were selling their house and they had to
Yeah.
have it, then we
So
would
that
have.
grants the authority to charge the fee
Okay.
under whatever circumstance it occurs. In order to require that inspection, it does require an ordinance that mandates such an inspection periodically, and that's the ordinance that the chief has
Great.
been working on.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. That does make sense. So really, right now, we can have them on a volunteer basis or pursuant to AB 38, which is a mandate. So establishing the fee at least allows us to collect the cost of performing that particular mandated function. Okay, so I didn't have any other questions, really. I just want to kind of cover those issues, but for us, council, again, we do have a couple of things to think about. Councilman Berlant, did you?
Yeah, you made one comment that I just want to, I think is important for all of us to note, that this idea of subsidy, if I'm not mistaken, the 94% number and the $350,000 is on the assumption, though, that we are doing the residential inspections at 1,200 and the businesses at 150, which today we are not. So I just want to be clear, we are not currently subsidizing these inspections by 94%. If we did all the inspections, then we would.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
That is correct. And I will point out to you that prior to COVID, we were doing the inspections at that time.
For the business
For the businesses. And we did do for a year and a half, we did do parcel inspections throughout the community.
Well, and that, just one idea to think about, and we can talk further about it. The law allows it, and something to think about is differentiating an inspection with a home assessment. And maybe because right now you provide a great service of having your staff as available to go out and do an assessment of their home. And so you may want to think about still having the assessment ability to do that outside of this fee schedule with the inspection fee for things like a real estate inspection. And then if we go down a different road. So I know that's where you're already thinking, but I just, for all of us, think that for residential parcels, as we build it out, we may want to separate inspections and assessments to get us out of, maybe sometimes we go do it and we don't charge for it.
It's important that we do differentiate between that. And then to Councilman Berlant's point, I think that it would be prudent to tell us exactly, again, and he has a great point. We're not performing all these inspections. We're not charging for all these inspections. So what is the real subsidy at this point? I know that we are collecting $21,514 for our fees, but for those fees that are currently in existence, how much should we be, if we were getting cost recovery? I'd like to know that for the fees that we're actually, or the services. I mean, that's the other thing. there are multiple services here that we are conducting, but we're charging nothing for.
Correct.
So
Maybe,
we're doing them and we're paying, people are paying nothing.
maybe you could just look at last year and what we did. So like in 1 year, what did we charge versus what we should have charged kind of?
And currently, since we don't have an ordinance, it's just all voluntary as to residences. Is that right?
For residences. yes.
Unless they're under AB 38. selling their house.
Okay.
I have a quick thing about the residential.
Mhm.
Is it you and I have kind of talked about maybe trying to figure out a way of subsidizing low income customers. And so I was wondering if you'd had any luck looking for maybe grants or anything to help, or if we were going to, maybe we don't subsidize it through the fee, but maybe we create a separate account for subsidizing low income customers that need, if we end up doing that fee. Cause I think it's important that it's one thing if it's required to sell your house. Most of the time you're making some money off your house and the $200 is not a big deal. If you're a low income customer who has no interest in selling their house, $200 is a pretty significant number. So I think that we should keep that in mind and that we should maybe provide a resource for helping those members of our community that can't afford that.
And the other point is just to remember too, that the fee would be paid by the property owner. So not by if there is a renter or someone, the renter isn't going to pay for that. It's going to be the owner of the property that's paying for that. But that's something to, Councilwoman, if that's something that you are interested in talking about, that to be prepared to talk about that further on the 27th.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm going to open this item up for public comment. Is there any public comment on this item? Please come on up to the lectern and introduce yourself and
My name is Jack Farless. I'm with the Grand Oaks Firewise Committee and appreciate being able to address the council right now. I would say the homeowner assessment thing is the best bargain homeowners have in the city of Auburn. That is the best way of finding out what you need to do. We've had it done in our home. And fire truck arrived. We had 4 firemen walk around our front yard and our backyard. They don't go in the house or anything. It's just what's outside the house. And the next day, they emailed me a checklist of things that have already been done, things that should be done. And we've tried on 2 different occasions in our community to try to get people to do that. And so far, I'm still the only one.
really?
And I think they're afraid of having that information in the city files. If there's ever a fire, they're afraid that it's going to be known to the insurance companies. And that's what several homeowners have told me. So, I try to tell them, it's really kind of a confidential thing, but there's just no way of getting that point across to anybody. But I'm firmly believe that the only way the city is going to have compliance to battle to make the entire city safe from wildfires, the best way that we can, you have to have the homeowner inspections, whether they're mandatory or voluntary, probably makes no difference. Homeowners have to know what they should do. And the only way you're going to know what to do is to have the inspection. But it is the best deal that Dave provides, and it's free. Doesn't
Right
cost
now.
a dime.
Thank you, Jack. And thank you for all your work with your Firewise community. We know you're incredibly active out there. And so we do appreciate all your efforts. So thank you.
Okay. I thank you for your efforts too.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? Yes, please come forward.
Rick Dusty again. So I'm speaking right now as myself, not as the president of the Grand Oaks HOA. Anyway, so I don't have a problem with the fee, to be honest with you. I can't speak for my neighbors. But I do think when we have the town halls, we need to have a number of them so that people can make them. For example, throughout town, they can't make us have to work. That's a problem. Somehow we have to figure out how we communicate it so that people actually know about them. And what I would be interested in knowing is, okay, what's going to be inspected? What's the expectations out of that inspection? And then are there consequences of that inspection if we don't do what's recommended, for example? And so I think to have a town hall just as float ideas isn't going to be very helpful. I think we're going to have to propose something, get feedback on it, and then see if we need to modify it or adjust it or what have you. So.
Frequently
Yeah.
asked questions. And I think that what we'll do with the town halls is we'll have them at different times of the day, and we'll also make them Zoom accessible so that people can participate. I'm letting the city clerk know that right now,
Yeah.
so that folks can participate electronically as well.
And different people have different issues. You know, Jack has a one-story house on a flat lot. Some of those houses like mine that back up to the ravine, it's 30, 40 feet to get to those roof vents, for example, on the back. And so a lot of residents say, how am I going to do that? Or what's it going to cost me? So I think information is going to be the main thing. And I do commend Jack for all the work he does, making us a Firewise community every year. And because it does take a lot of work, and he doesn't get the appreciation, I'm sure, from the community that he deserves. So thanks.
One thing we can think about with those town halls, generally we have them here at City Hall, and that does allow us to have Zoom, but we may even want to think about going out into maybe some community centers as well, just so that we're closer to folks. You know, I think it's, you know, getting the word out and collecting public comment, and just the whole thing is going to be vital on this for the success. So the more outreach we can do, the better. And so thank you very much for your comments. Any other public comments at this time? Hearing none, I'm going to bring this back to the council, and this was just an informational item, even though it's agended as an action item. We will be taking no action at this time. We will be looking to take action on February 27th. So next item on the agenda, we're going to move to city manager report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The only item I have this evening is just a reminder for the public that there will only be one council meeting in February. That February 13th is a holiday, and the next meeting will be on February 27th. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. That was concise. Okay. I'm going to go to city council committee reports, and I'm going to start with Councilman Holmes.
Oh, thank you. Yes, just to make you aware, I went to the Auburn Recreation District meeting last week. And as some of you may be aware, they are in the interview process now to appoint a successor to Jim Ferris, who was an elected member and who moved out of the area. So they expect to appoint somebody in the next month or so to fill that position. I mentioned earlier about the California Cultural and Historical Endowment, and in relation to the City Hall, the old City Hall. But I also wanted to mention that for the Carnegie Library building, that we may be able to get some funding from that endowment to help take care of both of those buildings. Also, one of the things that, you know, we in 2004, we passed the city historical ordinance, which one section that had about applying to cast the Historic Design Review Commission to find resources for maintenance of historic buildings and so forth. And one of those is the certified local government, which has not been adopted by the city. I'd like to suggest that maybe we take a look at that and get a briefing from the State Office of Historical Preservation on the details of making Auburn a certified local government. Finally, the Greater Sacramento Economic Council, which, as the name suggests, is based in Sacramento, but the Placer County and most of the cities in the Placer County are members, except Colfax and Auburn. So I'd like to suggest that we take a closer look at joining GSEC and how it might benefit us as far as an economic development effort here for the city of Auburn.
Councilman Holmes, on the GSEC, I would like to talk to you offline about that because I have some questions. So, about that.
Okay.
With regards to certified local government, I heard Councilman Holmes ask that that be calendared for another agenda. I do recall that this council recently considered this item, and at that time, there was no desire to move forward. The councilman's now making another request that we schedule an agenda item for this. Is there a consensus from the council to do that? Hearing none.
Well, I'm not asking that it be
You're asking for a presentation.
before the HDRC.
Well, if the council is not interested in pursuing that, I think that it would be it wouldn't be appropriate to have the Historic Design Review Commission hear a presentation on it because the council has already indicated that it's not interested in pursuing it at this time. Well, the problem with that, though, is if the council's already said that they're not interested in pursuing it at this time, then we are giving them mixed signals. It's really giving them.
Well, eventually,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
it
So-
would, but
So I don't, I, with all due respect, I understand, and I think the council has had the opportunity. We did have this on our agenda item at one time, just recently, and there was not a majority of council members that wanted to pursue that. So I think that. Uh-huh.
I just thinking, if HDRC had a recommendation and listen and they're supportive, it might change mine. I don't know how the rest of you feel.
My thought is that since there was not a majority of the council members interested in it, I didn't think that it doesn't make a lot of sense to have them pursue it, especially since we just talked about it. I do respect we have potentially two, but we did not have a majority. And so I think that for the purposes of our business, it would be inconsistent with us to recommend that they have a presentation on it. Did you want to say something, Councilman Berlant?
It's not an agendized
Yeah,
item,
we're-
but
it was really
I
just-
thought that we did send it to the planning commission. I know we have two commissioners here, but I thought the planning commission, whether it was in a meeting or just that there wasn't a majority, it didn't even make it to
No.
their agenda. And so even though the HRC is several more members,
Mhm.
I think the core group is kind of in the same line that that's not the priority
Yes.
at the moment.
Yeah, and the planning commission, with Councilwoman Amara and I were both on it, we talked about this as well. So I just wanted to close the loop on that, Councilman. I didn't want you to not have an answer.
well, my response to your comments is that yes, the city council had looked at that several times. My complaint is that there was not enough information about the pros and cons of being a certified local government that were presented. And at the last attempt to have it before the HDRC, our former city manager nixed the idea of even having a brief from SHPO.
And I think
Mayor
this
and
is not
council.
on the agenda
Yeah.
for today, so we really need to stop discussions. But again, there is not a majority of the council members that have expressed an interest in doing that. So I just wanted to let Councilman Holmes understand that. All right, thank you. Do you have anything else to report?
Well, at this point, no.
Okay. I'm going to go over here to Councilwoman Amara.
Thank you. So I was just attended the mosquito vector meeting, and there, I'm sad to say, because of the extreme weather and dampness, we will have a very good showing of mosquitoes this year. There's also been, they're involved with the tick surveillance and the Yellow Jacket project. So anyway, I do like listening to the latest. They work very hard and especially with the mosquitoes, that's very important. They get ahead of that. And again, they're going to be quite busy this year. So with regard to the School Park Preserve, there was a meeting and primarily it was involved. Well, we're working with ARD for the outdoor event center. And we're still at the stage where we are developing a plan to move forward. And that will be coming on for further discussion and to the city council sooner than later, we're hoping. But it's exciting to collaborate with ARD. They really are helping us out on this project. And this is an exciting project for us because as you all recall, we've had so much vandalism down at the School Park Preserve. This opportunity to have an outdoor event center, which will be utilized by pickleball players during the day. There'll be lighting is the hope, fencing. And if anybody has gone down there, if you haven't gone down there, go down there because you have a beautiful direct line of vision to the school park. And we're hoping that that will alleviate a lot of the vandalism and destruction that's taking place down there, and we'll be able to utilize that area. With regard to the proposed pickleball, the reason why that came up was that that is such a growing sport, and there's so many people, and it's utilized by the parks all the time. There'll be people constantly going around and being able to have a presence. And also we're going to have a recessed pole so that it'll go down, and it'll be a wonderful opportunity for our city and our community to have it as an event center. And as you know, the Downtown Business Association was working to create an event center there. They had other ideas of having some other use for that area, but this we decided was one of the most beneficial uses at this point. And it's wonderful that we have ARD helping us. They've been extremely helpful, and that's exciting. Then there's the development agreement that is being drafted with the city, Placer Community Foundation, the Skyview Foundation, and that's for the acquisition, development, and management of the School Park Preserve. And that's basically compiling the data that has been in the books. We're putting it all together. Initially, the groups that were involved in the school park committee was the Immigrant Trails Greenway Trust, the Auburn Community Foundation, Auburn Elementary School District, the Boys and Girls Club, the Placer Land Trust, and the City of Auburn. So now we're going to consolidate it down. As you know, some of those entities are no longer involved with the School Park Preserve. And then the sustainability met, and a couple of things came out of that. One of them, there was a individual who is interested in bicycles, biking along the city roads. And as you know, I've always been a proponent of creating bike trails in Auburn. Well, this one of our constituent, her name is Kelly Davis, and she is very, very interested in being able to bike her children to and from our schools. You seems like you know her. Oh, she's fabulous.
There you go.
Anyway, she and I do want to give a shout out. She said that she's lived all over the world, and she came back to Auburn to live, and she loves it. So she has been extremely helpful, and Menjel has been so helpful as well. Menjel, myself, and Kelly met informally, and Kelly went through all our records and found a bike. I did bring it with me. I'll pass that along. It's a very old bike plan that is actually goes all through our city, and it just got buried away and never was really implemented, although parts of it were. If you go around the city, you will see, I think even on Pacific Street, there's signs that lead you to Gum Lane and safe ways to get through and around Auburn. And it says bike trail.
Yep.
And that was done by Brad Kearns. And I reached out to him. He's very excited and he wants to help. But anyway, to make a long story short, the Sustainability Committee is involved in trying to help facilitate that project. And it's really will be a wonderful little project to get going. So anyway, shout out to Menjel too for helping. And then the sustainability, we met and we had several other items. And I just do want to point out, in the world of sustainability, many topics arise and many opportunities for improvements. Laws and regulations sometimes come up and modify or create a sense of urgency. And it's not our committee, sustainability is not like the arts and some of the other committees where you have projects and they aren't impacted to the same extent by changes in the law and that sort of thing. So that leads us to a couple of items that just came up. Well, one of them is the area in front of the city hall and the police station. We're being, and I think the fire station at Maidu, is that fire station 1? 3. They took advantage quickly with PG&E funds and did a whole drought resistant landscape there. Well, the sustainability is working on transforming the area in front of City Hall and the police station to a drought resistant landscape. So we're going to have further information to follow. But again, this is the committee is proposing changes to the front and it falls within the committee's budget. But I encourage anyone, if you have a problem with this project, it's not on the sustainability's budget, because again, this is something that came up. But if you have a problem, please put it on the agenda and we can work through it.
Councilwoman, should we just go ahead and have an agenda item on that so we can get a briefing as a council and then we can, take action to support that or not?
I've asked the committee member to give a little information if you would like that, if you want to take the time to do that.
Yeah, I think it would be because it is not within the, and I absolutely respect what you're saying. It's something that came up. It wasn't in the actual budget itself. You have the funds.
But it's within the budget, yes.
Yeah, you have the funds for it. But just to we're talking about process. I will agree that we should bring that before the council and have a report and a recommendation, and then we can move forward. I think it's a great project. So let's put that on the agenda so we can take action.
So more than just information, then you want it as a.
Yeah, so we can,
Okay.
we can support it or not. If some.
Okay.
I want my grant.
Okay, sustainability also spoke and discussed the need for the investment grade audit, as well as the need for a completed interconnect application to PG&E. And in that regard, so in order to maximize our potential energy cost savings with solar, we must have a signed and completed interconnect application with PG&E by April 13th of this year. If we do not, we could potentially lose out on millions of dollars of solar energy credits in the future. And if we complete the process before April 13th, we will be grandfathered into the NEM 2.0. And if we install the solar within 3 years of that date, if we install the solar, if we don't comply with the application process before April 13th, we will be subject to the provisions of the NEM 3, which was passed on December 15th of 2022 and by the California Public Utilities Commission. And that would make the installation of solar far less attractive, since the retail rate for energy sold back to the grid would decrease by roughly 75%. So our failure to complete this application process would therefore would lock us out for potential significant savings for the city of Auburn. So I want to add that we have known about this issue only since mid-November, when I was, as mayor, I look back in my email, John Burdette of Veolia on November 11th sent an email to the former city manager and myself and indicated that this was of urgency. the city manager, John Donlevy, on an update on November 18th to all of the city council members here, said the Sustainability Committee is working with the city on energy alternatives, including City Hall, police, courtyard, and shifting some areas to encompass more savings for the city. So therefore, this item was discussed, as discussed at sustainability, is extremely important to resolve. And it's important for us at City Council that we do this in an expedited manner. So I'm requesting a special meeting to move forward specifically to discuss solar and primarily the need for an interconnect application for 7 sites: the wastewater treatment plant, City Hall parking lot, police station, courtyard, Fire Station 1, Fire Station 2, and Fire Station 3. So with that, that's my request, is
Okay.
that we could have a Zoom or whatever.
So, Councilwoman Amara is suggesting that, or recommending that the city council hold a special meeting for the purposes of discussing whether or not to pursue the solar interconnects for those 7 sites that she just named. And so I will agree to have a special meeting for the purposes of discussing the solar connects for the 7. At that meeting, it would be an opportunity for us to discuss whether or not we want to do one or none or all. So there will be an opportunity to flesh that out. And then let's just say that the council decides to go with 5, then the direction would be for staff then to go out and get a contractor who can actually conduct those solar interconnects. If it's under $40,000, which we believe the cost would be, then that would not be required to come back a 3rd time to the council, that we could go ahead and just do that without going to bid. Correct, Gary?
That is correct.
Okay, so so with that said,
One quick thing.
yes,
I know that Menjel in the past has gotten estimates on police station and on courtyard. So I was wondering if he could bring us that information to that meeting so we can get a ballpark on how much at least those 2 projects would be, because with the market and everything right now, I know we don't really have any sense of how much these would truly cost.
so what I would do is I would
Well-
defer to staff to determine when the special meeting will be. We do know that NEM 3.0 goes into effect April 15th. So there is, the clock is ticking, but I want to defer to staff. They will make sure that we get all the information that we need to decide whether or not we're going to pursue one or all of those interconnects, and including the work that's already been done.
Thank you.
And again, that purpose of that meeting will be to discuss that. And then if we choose to pursue it, then we will have another meeting to do that. Yes.
Yeah, I would just recommend to the council to save this for the special meeting too.
To
A
what?
detailed discussion of this.
I'm sorry. Oh, yes. Yeah, we're not gonna discuss it anymore.
Right,
So-
and that's correct, because we do need all the information for us to make these decisions
So-
at the next meeting.
So just for the purposes of tonight, I just simply wanted to make sure it was clear to everybody. This is a 2-step process so that everyone's clear what we're doing. And I will agree with you, Councilwoman. Okay. Do you have anything else to report?
No.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Councilman Berlant said you didn't have anything. Councilwoman Riddell Harris. I'll go back to you.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just had a couple quick things. The Economic Development Commission met. We're moving forward with our branding initiative. We've been working with a consultant, and they're going out and they're trying to get information on who they should be talking to, key people within the community. They're going to be visiting end of February, believe they said, to talk with folks and kind of get a sense of the town. They know pretty well since they did the Visit Placer branding. They know the town fairly well, but they wanted to come and make sure that they walked through all the spots that we thought were important and got to know the places that we think are key, and then also talk to the key folks that are involved. So there'll be, after they talk to key stakeholders, there will be large community events as well to get feedback and things like that once they've done those key stakeholder outreaches as well. I also went to several AUSD meetings to discuss the school closures. The decision was to close Rock Creek Elementary. So they did ask about our ability to help with transit, and I told them, as always, we're open to discussion, but we only have small buses that can't move those kinds of, that number of children, and Rock Creek's not even within our boundaries. So they were going to be talking to PCTPA and Placer County about the options to work with them. One thing that did come up with several people is the possibility of creating a school year pass for youth to be able to use our transit system if they needed to get an occasional ride home or things like that. So I wanted to put it to the council about, just ask the question if they would be in support of us getting, first off, I think it would be good for us to get an update on how transit's doing, if we have the capacity, how the funding is going, and then also the possibility of us having I think maybe even a youth and a senior pass both ends might be helpful. But I think a youth pass for the annual school year, I think it would be a good way of parents being able to create that funding option. There's also, from what I've heard from private industry, there's folks that are interested in possibly sponsoring low income students that need a pass. And so for them be able to pay once versus having to pay each time that the youth wants to ride the transit, that would be more beneficial for them as well. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay, so Councilwoman is asking for a future agenda item to discuss our transit passes and whether or not we want to adopt a student pass or what have you. So I will agree that we can to go ahead and schedule that for a future agenda item. Staff's got a lot on their plate right now, and we can further discuss. Is there any objection to that?
Okay. I had one more quick thing that I wanted to bring up. From my experience doing other things around EVs with my day job, there's a lot going on with electric vehicles and the clean fleet regulations that are going to be going into effect for public agencies in about 2 years. There's going to be a 50% purchase requirement, which will be impacting our vehicles here at the city. The city of Roseville did a competitive process to get a consultant to give them a plan for how they would turn over their vehicles based on their duty cycles, also where their charging may want to happen and how they could possibly plan out that funding for that, so that way they could put it in their budgets and things like that, which I think is all going to be key to us being able to provide all those resources for converting our fleet. Since that competitive process was done through Roseville, we're able to piggyback off of that and ask that same contractor for an estimate on what a plan would cost for a city our size, which is substantially smaller. So I wanted to see if I had support to direct staff to just go and ask. They would just basically ask the number of vehicles that we have and the number of sites we'd charge, and they would give us a basic estimate on what it would cost to do a plan. And so, and not to do the plan itself, just an estimate, because I don't have a concept on a city our size, what it would cost to do that.
So for us to direct staff as a council, we'd have to have an agenda item, because we would need to have a majority of council members to ask the staff to take action.
So can we put it on the agenda?
So the request is to have another agenda item to discuss the
EV conversion and fleet management, I guess, is the issue, because we're going to have to figure out how to deal with this. It's coming up.
So is there any objection to having a future item on that?
No.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Holmes?
Well, I had one additional item that Council Member Amara reminded me that at the traffic committee meeting last week, I brought up the fact that there is a bike trail that goes up Nevada Street that ends about 50 feet before Fulweiler. And it says that the bike trail ends there. And so anybody that's riding a bicycle up there would be confused as to what to do once they reach that point. So I think the traffic committee is going to take it under advisement, I think, and see if there's a technical reason why that bike trail can't go all the way to Fullwiler.
Yeah, are you on the traffic committee? Or you just want?
Yeah.
Yes, he's.
All right, thank you, Councilman Holmes. I do have a couple things to report. I don't have any requests to put anything on the agenda, just a couple things to report. First of all, the Endurance Capital of the World Committee has been working very diligently to promote Auburn as the Endurance Capital of the World. And one thing that we have done is within our promotional giveaways line item budget, we've actually gone out and started to purchase gift cards from local businesses, $5, $10 denominations, all kinds of businesses downtown. And we're using those as prizes on we have a spin the wheel. So if you've ever seen the Endurance Capital's booth, they have a wheel and people just flock to it because they get swag, you know. And so we have a couple of items on the agenda, you know, local heroes, Tango, just different places. Yeti, yes, I already said Yeti. I mean, yes, Yeti will be, but burgers and cream, just a whole variety. We just did a little pilot where we went out and purchased cards for $100 and it was just a huge hit. People loved coming over to our booth, learning more about Auburn as the Endurance Capital of the World. And then they got a little gift card and encouraged them to go downtown and to spend it. So it's been highly successful. We've had a couple businesses say, hey, we'd like to, you know, you're going to buy a $5 gift card. We'd like to give you $10. So we're not asking the businesses to donate, but we certainly are if they'd like to partner with us, it's great. So we've got some other ideas. We're working with the businesses to maybe get stickers and business windows saying that they support Auburn as the Endurance Capital of the World. So we've been very active on that end. With regards to Pioneer Community Energy, we met last week. I was elected chair again for a second year. I was very grateful for that opportunity to serve again. Great news with regards to rates. PG&E finally released their final PCIA amounts on December 30th. And based on the rates that we adopted as a board in December, those folks that are Pioneer Community Energy customers within Placer County, including the city of Auburn, their discount is a 15% discount from PG&E electrical rates. And for our constituents in El Dorado County and in Placerville, they're going to see a 19.5% discount in their from their PG&E rate. So if you don't belong to Pioneer Community Energy now is the time. They have webinars to talk about it. There's no cost to move over. And so it's a great program, but you can save real dollars here. So our rates, again, with this PCIA, with them setting that, and the PUC actually decided in our favor because PG&E wanted to have a sliding fee. So that's great news. So again, if you're not customers, please check out Pioneer Community Energy because there are some real savings. And you can also, if you're interested, they have 100% renewable power as well for those folks that are interested in that particular component. With regards to SACOG and Placer County Planning Transportation Agency, SACOG met last week. Placer County Planning Transportation Agency will meet this week. And one thing I just want to make my colleagues clear that the federal government has taken corrective action against Caltrans with regards to the dissemination of 2 federal funds that are passed down through SACOG to Placer County Transportation Planning and El Dorado County Planning, Transportation and Planning. And previously, when these funds, they're from the STBG and the CMAQ funds, when these monies would come to SACOG, they were distributed to the Placer County and El Dorado based on a per capita so that we could budget for what our monies were for. Now, at PCTPA, the Placer County Transportation Planning, those federal funds fund 80% of our roadway work. So that's huge for us, 80%. And so it's significant for us because this corrective action, what it's done is the federal government has said you cannot disperse this money via per capita anymore. You need to have standards in place. SACOG has standards for the other 4 counties that belong to it: Sacramento County, Yolo, Yuba, and Sutter. And so right now we're in negotiations, both Placer County and El Dorado, with SACOG to ensure that we can establish a fair and equitable distribution of those monies, because we're not going to get them as we were getting them in the past. everything is going very well. I've had lots of discussions with both SACOG Executive Director and Placer County Transportation to ensure that everyone is working well together. SACOG understands that change is very difficult. This is a formula we've been using for 20+ years. And there's a lot of anxiety because we want to ensure that we have those funds for our roadway services, again, 80%. So, but everyone's working very well together. So, but I just want to make folks aware of that. You may have kind of heard this, but that's what's happening at the federal and at the SACOG level and even here at the local level as well. And that is all that I have to report this evening. So with that, unless there's any further business, seeing none, I will hereby adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
So we will have a special meeting.